Welcome back to episode number 6 of our Come Reflect Act series, and today we will dive deeper into the vulnerability handling requirements that are imposed by the Cyber Resilience Act. First of all, it's very important to distinguish between vulnerability handling and vulnerability reporting requirements. The vulnerability reporting requirements will already apply earlier than the rest of the CRA. They will apply from 11th September 2026 onwards, and the remaining requirements of the CRA, including the vulnerability handling requirements, will apply from 11th December 2027 onwards. However, failure to comply with the vulnerability reporting obligations have the same consequences as failing to comply with the Cyber Resilience Act as a whole. So we're talking here about financial penalties of up to 50 million euros or 2.5% of the global turnover of the company. And in this video, we'd like to dive deeper into each single one of the 8 vulnerability handling requirements afterwards. The first vulnerability handling requirement for IoT manufacturers is to identify and document any vulnerabilities. Very simply said, you can't fix anything that you're not aware it exists in your product. In other words, you have to create an ingredients list of your IoT product in order to be able to be aware of any vulnerabilities within the different components within this specific IoT product and to fix them afterwards. So ideally, you will start with drawing up some kind of SBOM, whether it's automated or not, to get visibility in what's included in your connected product. The second vulnerability handling requirement forces IoT manufacturers to address risk management and provide timely security updates. I have a very good comparison here to think of this requirement in a more practical way. If you realize that the lock to your house is broken, you don't wait until you renovate the whole house, you fix the lock immediately. And the same applies to the concept. The same concept applies to your IoT products. If you discover that your data collection software has significant vulnerability that you need to fix in order to keep attackers out of your product, then you have to deliver that update and that fix immediately or in a timely manner and not wait until you refactor your whole product. Vulnerability handling requirement number 3 forces IoT manufacturers to implement security testing over the entire lifetime of a product. So it's recommended to, for example, do a pen test before launching a product and regular code reviews throughout the product's lifetime when it's already operated by your customers. It's a bit like maintaining a car. It leaves the manufacturer in perfect conditions, but throughout its lifetime, there's some wear and tear and you need to replace some parts, and therefore you servitize it regularly. And this concept now also applies to IoT products and products with digital elements, that you regularly do code reviews, pen tests to get a very clear picture of the security posture that your IoT product currently has on the market. Vulnerability handling requirement number 4 forces IoT manufacturers to implement vulnerability disclosure and update notice processes for the public. So basically what this means is that whenever there is a vulnerability in your IoT product, you need to report that publicly and also update your customers. It's a bit like we have it with car manufacturers. Again, when there is a faulty airbag installed in a certain series of cars, then the manufacturer needs to inform their customers and need to replace that faulty airbag in order to guarantee safety and security for the passengers. And therefore, when security updates are available, they need to have clear instructions. What was fixed? How does it affect the user? And how can the user stay protected? Vulnerability handling requirement number 5 asks IoT manufacturers to implement a coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. This mainly addresses internal processes that the IoT manufacturers need to define and build up. So basically you can think of this as an emergency hotline for users or researchers or other institutions to call you as a manufacturer and report any vulnerabilities. And then after you get the notice or the information of a vulnerability, you need to have clear processes of what happens next, how will we report this to the engineers, how will we fix this vulnerability, that you eventually then come to a fast and efficient vulnerability resolution that you can then provide to your users with the help of a security update, for example. Vulnerability handling requirement number 6 focuses on vulnerability sharing and the establishment of a reporting contact. And this can be as simple as having a dedicated email address, security@yourcompaniesname.com, for example, where all vulnerability reports can be sent to and will be handled then afterwards. So it's very much connected to the coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy that you need to implement as well. In other words, you can think of establishing a clear front desk where users can come to with their vulnerabilities that handles those reports in the first instance and then passes it on to the dedicated person's departments or processes. Vulnerability handling requirement number 7 focuses on the secure update delivery, and there are a couple of best practices that you can implement for that. For example, hashing every update that you deliver to your devices so that the device can verify if the update's coming from a trusted source. Thereby you can mitigate any update tampering or attackers injecting fake updates for your devices. It's also recommended that you basically log any update that the IoT device executes, and therefore you also have then the transparency of what has happened to your IoT product from an update perspective. So there are a couple of best practices out there that you can use in order to fulfill this requirement. Vulnerability handling requirement number 8 asks IoT manufacturers to provide and retain security updates. This can be compared to an example we already had previously. If there is a faulty airbag in your car, then you will likely only get a notice from the manufacturer saying you have to drive to this repair shop, and the rest will be done by the repair shop. Similar to that, if there is a faulty software or any other issue within your IoT product that you deliver, then you will have to basically provide an update in a timely manner, free of charge, and also accompanied by clear guidance of what you as a user, if you even have to do some steps to execute the update, have to do in order that your IoT product is secure again. As you see, achieving compliance with the vulnerability handling requirements isn't only about implementing another security tool, it's also about adapting, changing, or creating new internal processes. And those processes that are imposed by those requirements will eventually modernize and secure your software development processes internally as well. For example, the SBOM creation. This can also improve operational processes that you currently have, and is not only an evil compliance obligation, but also a chance to improve internal processes and make them more efficient. And this is how compliance becomes a business enabler and not just a cost factor. Especially when looking at the vulnerability handling requirements, it becomes clear that it's not only about implementing new tools, but also about changing internal processes and making them more efficient. And this also basically is a chance for you to improve certain operational processes that you currently have in place within your software development, for example. And furthermore, if you want to dive deeper in how those vulnerability handling requirements will affect your products, we have an overview blog post about all the 8 requirements, and we will also publish a deep dive blog post for every single one of them that we have just discussed. So feel free to check those out in our blog section.